Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome back to the Onyx Tavern Vlog series on Power Rangers Dino Charge. Today we are going to be discussing Episode 2, Past, Present, and Fusion. So again, Dino Charge is already out to a very good start. I really enjoyed the first episode, and I really enjoyed this episode as well. Probably not as much as the first episode, but the first episode was kind of like the first fresh breath of the day when you've been stuck in the house all day, basically. And this is just a continuation of it. It still feels good, just not as good as that first breath that you take. But again, I thought this was a pretty good episode that we had. Very good continuation of the story, and it really doesn't even end with a resolution to anything, but more of a establishment of part of the status quo. And what do I mean by that? In this episode, all 5 Rangers get together, they morph, they fight the monster, win the day. And that typically does happen with a lot of first and second episodes of the series. But the episode doesn't even establish the other Rangers' Zords at this point. We haven't established a lot about Sledge outside of what we saw in the first act of the first episode. And a lot of things just haven't fully come together yet. I would go ahead and say that the third act of this episode seems a bit rushed from what we've had for at least the first 2/3 of this episode. And there are some bad things I want to go ahead and talk about, but not so many bad things, just things that just don't flow very well, that probably need to be worked on as we go along. But let's talk about the good stuff in this episode. First, the teaser was really good. When we actually get to the teaser, this is the introduction of our character of Riley, our Green Ranger. And I think one of the criticisms I've had of Power Rangers being filmed in New Zealand is they don't take opportunity or advantage of the locations that they have. We have the standard quarry, we have a city shot, we have a lot of interior shots. We don't use the environment to its fullest potential. That being said, this teaser with these beautiful kind of sweeping shots that they have, the craning shots, and the lighting that they have just on this little ranch where Riley and Matt live, it was just really good. It felt like I was watching something that took place outdoors. The biggest issue you have with a lot of television shows is that you can tell that they all take place indoors, on sound stages, on back lots, and all that. But I really got the sense that we were, outdoors in a large, unrestricted location here. So you got a good vibe with it too. And the lighting was really good as well. For this entire teaser, especially when Riley is in the barn working on his fencing, which, credit to the episode, what I was really concerned about, and we talked about this in our casting information, is that the casting information really didn't talk about Riley having any type of sword skills, and if it's going to match the Sentai footage, he has to be a swordsman of some kind, and this episode firmly establishes that he likes fencing as a hobby. Great! I love that idea. So that's the first thing they introduce with his character. Then when he gets his energem, he fights with a sword. It's all established, so by the time we actually get him into the Green Ranger costume and he's doing those sword moves, we believe it. And I like that. So that's a very good foresight on the character, on the development of this character by the writers and the production team. Along with that, the fight that he has with Fury with the sword, that's pretty cool, because it's even a kind of a turn on the sword and the stone thing. Basically, Riley's gets this metal rod or something that he finds in the woods. It gets embedded into the stone, and he tries to pull it out to continue to fight Fury with it, and it gets powered by the energem to become, the Dino Charge sword, whatever the name for it is at this point. And he's able to pull it out and fight with it. So it's a new turn, I think, on Arthurian lore and the sword and the stone, and even, when you look at Lost Galaxy, how they pull the swords out of the stone. This is a little bit different, a little bit refreshing, so I really kind of like that. But again, the teaser was very well done. The whole establishment of Riley, we don't know him too much as a character other than he resents his life on the farm, and it's kind of a Disney princess, I want more. It's not overt, but you really kind of get that sense with him. Now, just kind of when we continue on here, he meets up with Tyler and Shelby. And something very interesting happens in this. I'm not going to call too much attention to it or a lot of criticism to it, but I'm just really kind of confused on this point. So basically the three come upon a couple who's been in a car wreck. A car wreck where the car is flipped over, the wife has gotten out, but the husband seems to be stuck in the, like, under the car. Like, the car is on top him. I had to kind of rewatch it. It was a little hard to see. But he's kind of stuck in the vehicle, and they got to go ahead and help him. And instead of, like, pulling him out, they got to, like, push the car off of him. But what's really hilarious about this is that the car is actually leaking gasoline, so they got to get him out quick before something happens. And the Energems empower them so much that they flip the car into the air and it explodes in the air. And it's just hilarious. But I couldn't help but asking myself, what kind of accident did this couple get into to where the husband is under the top of the car? Because the car is completely flipped upside down, and for any of it to make sense, what happened, he had to be under the top of the car. So again, I'd like to know what type of accident happened here. I almost thought it was a setup by a villain. You know, we've seen this before. You know, some sort of setup where, you know, they call out the Rangers and they come and help and then they ambush them. Because it just seems a very odd thing to go ahead and see. But again, I'm not going to dwell on that too much. I just thought it was funny that this CGI car is flying up and explodes in midair. Kind of an interesting action beat into our first act. So anyway, they get back to the museum, and everybody gets together. We find out that what happened to the other two Energems with the characters of Coda and Chase. We find the Keeper is still alive, and that Dr. Morgan is running the whole show, basically. Now, she does something kind of interesting in the episode, and I want to draw attention to that, and I want to draw attention to her and her relationship with Shelby specifically. So when Tyler, Riley, and Shelby all enter I guess I'm going to call it the Dino Cave for right now, she is able to state to Tyler and Riley why they were chosen for the Dino Gems. Or, the Energems, excuse me, why they were chosen to wield them. However, this is the first time that they have met one another, basically. You know, Morgan has never met Tyler before, she's never met Riley, but somehow she knows why they were chosen to be, to bond with the Energems. That's kind of suspect as it is, but maybe we'll find down the line something else that they'll attribute to this. What that is, I don't know, but it just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense that she would go ahead and say that. Then she comes to Shelby, and she basically says, I have no idea why the hell you're a Power Ranger. I don't know why. And she completely disrespects Shelby in front of everybody, basically. I mean, in the previous episode, when Dr. Morgan was there, she basically said, you know, you're not qualified for this, we can't take you on the trip. And that was justifiable, given the circumstances, is that she didn't know anything about dinosaurs, she was a waitress, she didn't have a doctorate, she didn't know anything about this. So that kind of made sense. But here, she just really lays the smackdown on her, if that's the appropriate term. And then she even says, you know, something to the effect that you're a waitress, I don't think you can be of any help. Again, very disrespectful, and in front of everybody here. So, you know, I think off the bat, I don't like Dr. Morgan. Yes, I know she's going to end up being our Purple Ranger late in the series. And, you know, compared to Yayoi, you know, I like Yayoi and her personality. But these are two different characters. I understand that. But what I am hoping is that, I mean, first of all, Dr. Morgan talking down to Shelby gives her incentive to be better than she is. And I really like that. And that plays up well in this episode. And I would like to see a dynamic between these two throughout the series. Because you got the only two females on the cast, basically, and they're butting heads with each other. Which I do like. Because they're not friends, they're not buddy buds, they're not chums and all that. You know, Shelby's trying to prove herself to Dr. Morgan, and Dr. Morgan doesn't care for Shelby because she doesn't think she's qualified enough to do, well, anything outside of being a waitress. And, of course, keep in mind, Dr. Morgan's kind of right because Shelby was a pretty bad waitress in our first episode. But I want to see this dynamic continue. I want to see eventually Dr. Morgan respects Shelby for what she does, and I want one of the driving forces for Shelby to be not so much to win Dr. Morgan's approval or anything, but to prove Dr. Morgan wrong. That's what I want to go ahead and see. That's what I hope we're going to go ahead and get as the series does progress. Now, we get some more speaking lines with Chase and Coda in this, and the thing is that we've already kind of got established traits about them from the first episode, but we don't really learn much more about them. But also credit where credit is due, their character personalities do fit in with the Sentai footage. So Chase, even though the dialogue is a little bit off, does say that he's a hot shot, and that, you know, he's got this cool vibe to him in a way. So fits in with the Black Ranger footage. Coda is a caveman, which has not been established yet, but given the way he talks and the way his strength is being emphasized here, even the line about the Bronto Burger, which I think is great because it's a Flintstones reference to a caveman character, his use of strength fits well with the Blue Ranger footage. Of course, Shelby being the girl, I guess it fits. I don't know. Tyler doesn't really fit into the Daigo mold just yet, but I think the footage was kind of generic enough for them to kind of get away with it in this episode. So I'd imagine that one of two things will happen is that Tyler will either become more Daigo-like as the series goes on, or the footage will just not match. And knowing Neo-Saban, that might be the case. I don't know. We'll see where that takes us. A couple of other things. They do a lot of talking in the fighting sequences. That hasn't really changed. I really wish that's something that would be changed here shortly, because I don't like the idea that they're yelling out things the entire time they're fighting. Sentai's done this a few times, but they've kind of gone away with it, and they've kind of gone back on it a few times. But it's really become an annoyance within Power Rangers. It was really bad last couple of seasons, to be honest. And also, if you will notice, when you actually like freeze frame when they're putting the Dino Chargers into their morphers or their guns, whatever and stuff, you'll actually notice that they have their English equivalents and not the Japanese ones. So the red Charger actually says Tyrannosaurus Rex, which I am so thankful they have done that, because for those of you who watched Megaforce, you will see that all their cards will still have the Japanese on there. They have the Japanese language and the Japanese names for whatever it is. Somebody could not be bothered to reshoot that, edit that, Photoshop it, whatever. But they learned their lesson, and I really like that. So now all the insert shots have actually been American insert shots with the appropriate names of the new gems, or chargers. So I really appreciate that. It's the little things like that that are making me really enjoy Dino Charge now. So the episode doesn't necessarily end with a cliffhanger, but a promise of what to come, where we have Sledge, who seems like he's going to be using the inmates to do his fighting for him. What's motivating him to do this, to go back on being a bounty hunter, we don't know, but we will go ahead and find out in short order, of course. But that's all I really have about the episode. It was really good. I enjoyed it, had a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see the next one. So guys, I want to thank you all for listening. Come back for episode 3. But until then, have a good night, and the tavern is now closed.